Welcome to The Culture. We rest at the pulse of the community, providing all things news, media, fashion, events, and everything that we talk about in between. Documenting our Black powerful history and amplifying our Black voices, one interview at a time. We are The Culture.
Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of The Culture. I'm your host, Jessica Modkins, and joining us from Jacksonville City Council member, District 14, Rahman Johnson. Welcome to the show, sir.
Jessica, I am a fan of The Culture, so I'm not gonna geek out, but I'm obviously we're here under some unique circumstances, but yeah. I am so glad with all of your work in communications and media that you are doing this and that you are giving us a chance to discuss the culture. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. As I can see, you are out in the community right now. Many of the people here within South Florida heard the news of the tragic things that happened that were racially motivated right there in the city of Jacksonville. Can you please tell us what happened?
Well, it was honestly, and as I think about it now, as I've had a moment, Jessica, we should be having a very different conversation now, if even having a conversation at all. And the reason I say that is because I was sponsoring an event on the campus of Edward Waters that was supposed to happen that day at that time. As fortune would have it, or as I like to say, God would bless it, a pipe broke and the air conditioning went out and part of the roof fell. So we had to quickly move the event. It was with the HUD. They had this event called the House Party from Housing Urban Development. And so we moved the event from Edward Waters to the community college down about 2 miles away. But if not for that occurrence just a couple of days before, we would have all been there. But what we know when I was briefed later by the authorities is that a gunman from Clay County, which is the next county over, my district actually butts up against Clay County. This gunman who had swastikas on the guns that he had, who was a kid, 21 years old, drove from Clay County over to Edward Waters. When he got to Edward Waters, he got out of the car. He began to put on tactical vest and mask and gloves. Well, some of our students saw him. And the students, we always teach them to be vigilant, just like I know they do in South Florida at FLOMO. He just seemed out of place. And so the students alerted security. Security came over, and when he saw security come, when he saw them coming, he jumped in his car and sped off. And so security chased him, and he ended up driving into the Dollar General, and that's where he started his attack. But it started out on the campus, directly behind the library. Yes. And the video is there, and I know it's been out there somewhere. I'll share it with you for your viewers and listeners. But some students were in their car, and the students said, "Look at this guy. He looks like he's about to shoot something up." They kept saying that. They didn't see the guns, but it was just weird. It's a hot day. It's 100 degrees up here. And here's somebody getting out, putting on gloves and tactical vests. And it just didn't seem right for our community. And I'm so glad that they were vigilant and they didn't just say, well, hey, not my clown, not my show. You know, they really were vigilant. They called security, and our security rushed over to the guy and rushed him off campus.
Wow.
Yeah. And of course, as you know, he took the lives of 3 people senselessly, which is just absolutely, it is racist domestic terrorism. While I was sitting in the briefing, I had an opportunity to see some of the manifesto the manifestos, plural. He wrote 3 different ones. He was all over the place. It was like the rantings and ravings of a madman. But what he kept saying over and over is that he hated Black people. And I want it to be said, you know, they're blaming it on mental illness, and clearly the man was mentally ill. They're blaming it on So many things. They said he used to work at a Dollar General. I get all of that. But at the end of the day, he specifically said, I do not like Black people, and I'm going to kill Black people. And that's something that not only we should be alarmed about, but we've got to start, not even start, to continue to have more discussions so that diversity, here in the state, Jessica, I don't want to make this political, but it is what it is. Just weeks before, you had a group saying in education that that slavery, some of the slaves or the formerly enslaved learned valuable life skills during their enslavement. You have an attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion classes and or departments at different places. So it's actions like that that plant the seeds of discord that put us in places like what we see is happening or has happened last week at Edward Waters.
And I believe that has a lot to do with the temperament of that press conference that DeSantis gave, where he was booed there in Jacksonville just because of this environment that they are saying that he stirred up. This is a byproduct of what he wanted to happen here in Florida.
And regardless of how we want to say it, what we want to sugarcoat it and make it look like, there's a guy at 21. I mean, we all know we've seen the stories about hate and what we know about this hate disease virus that is in some of our communities. And I'm going to call it what it is. People aren't born hating. They learn to hate. This young man, I don't know him, never met him, never seen him before. But he did not come into this world hating Black people. Now, I'm not going to blame his parents. I'm not going to blame anyone. But what I will say is that people who have these divisive conversations, who say that the history of people of color don't exist, who want to marginalize the trans community or the LGBTQIA plus community as a whole, the disabled community, whatever other communities that are out there, when you see divisive rhetoric and hear it over and over, people who are mentally unstable, they internalize that stuff more and more. And the more they internalize it and the more they think they have to do something about it, eventually, when you hear it more and more, it's germinating. It's germinating. That was one of the issues that we had with the former president of the United States. There were things that were said over and over and over again. And it was so much so until you had people, we saw what happened on January 6th. So we've got to find ways. I think it comes education, number one, advocacy, number two, responsibility, number three. We've got to put those things in place. We've got to work. We've got to make sure that we are going to the ballot boxes and the polls. The governor can make certain decisions, but the majority of the decisions the governor just executes. It's the legislature that makes the decisions, but we have to make sure that we're putting intelligent people with integrity into the legislature who are not looking at a Democrat or Republican ideal, who are not looking at a Black or a white thing, but who look at things fairly. That's what we need. And unfortunately, when you have a legislature that says, we are going to sign off on these curricula that do not speak to the fullness of our society, or who say it's okay for us to subvert the law for one man because he's decided that his ambitions want to take him to the White House, and so we want to subvert the law. Those kind of things, that's how you start an autocratic society. And it just, we have to be the ones to step up to the plate and say no more.
What is the temperament like there in Jacksonville now? And I see that you are joining us remote. You're in your vehicle, and I thank you for that. What is it like there?
I have been in the community. There's a young lady, Jasmine Jones, I believe that's her name, and She is the only one that survived. From my understanding, I haven't talked to her yet, and we're trying to make sure that she has all of the services that she needs. Because and it's I'm getting chills thinking about it, Jessica. The man told her like eh, she was with her baby. And from my understanding, he did let them leave. Let her leave with her small baby and the white people. He told them that it was okay for them to leave. The temperament is sadness and heaviness. I was on the scene probably just as the gunman was neutralized, and I will tell you there was hugging, there was crying, there were people wandering. And you've been on Kings Road. You've been to Jacksonville. You know how big Kings Road is. It's a pretty wide thoroughfare. It's a state road. Um, there were people wandering around Kings Road, looking up into the air, just trying to make sense and find sense of the thing. And there was a heaviness and a sadness. I will tell you, I talked to one lady who she knew that her son-in-law had gone into the store, but she was under the impression that more survivors had made it out. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. I mean, when I was on the scene, I didn't go into the scene per se, but I was very close and I was near the sheriff. And the sheriff, as he was coming from the scene, he couldn't even speak to us. There was another member, Councilwoman Pittman, was there, and her assistant, and we ended up driving over together. And I'll tell you, on the scene, um, the sheriff came up and he just looked at me and he stared blankly and he just shook his head. And you could feel it was like he had been into a space of evil. And the evil was trying to attach itself to him, and he was trying to get away from it. If I could use that's the feeling. It was, so there's a sadness, there's a heaviness. Our goal is to not have that turn into anger. I went to a rally. There was a vigil the night of the next night, but after that there was a rally down at James Weldon Johnson Park, and we ended up about 1,000 people came out. We ended up marching around downtown because people needed an outlet. It's an interesting quandary for me because, as like yourself, I'm a journalist, I'm a communicator. So I'm looking at the story, but then on the other side of things, I'm a part of this story, right? This is my community. I'm a professor at this school. These are people we see. The Dollar General, in many ways, that's why I'm out in the street now, like doing the work to help people. One of the issues is that's a food desert area. I'm working with some groups now to hopefully get some other organizations, stores, whatever in here to combat. It's not my district, but at the end of the day, we all have to work together. But that Dollar General, while it may just seem like the dollar store or a cheap store, that is the place where people get their groceries. So and obviously the store had to remain closed. It has to go through cleaning and all of that. These issues that are being experienced are things that people are starting to in some ways feel forgotten, right? There's this forgotten feeling where they feel like no one is here for us. And so that's one of the things that I'm striving to do, is to make sure that they aren't forgotten, that we are there, that we make sure that we have the food. We had Feeding Northeast Florida come out on Saturday, right? They brought their truck out and we put them in the community and people were able to come and get their groceries. But we still need to keep the pressure on. So conversations like this, they are inherently important, Jessica, inherently. But it's sadness. To answer your question, it's sadness. And I pray that the work I'm doing and the other members of council and the other leaders in this community are doing move away from sadness and hopelessness in trying to find some way of being hopeful.
Understood. Is there any or was there anything in any of his manifestos that alluded to his original intent to be on Edward Waters College campus?
He didn't, from what was shared with me, he didn't specifically say I'm going to Edward Waters. So no. His thing was all about Black people. So it also, I'm not sure if you knew this or not, but his horrific racist domestic terrorist attack took place on the same day as another mass shooting in Jacksonville, 5 years to the day. This was the 5th year anniversary of a massacre at the Jacksonville Landing. There was a gaming tournament at the Jacksonville Landing, which has since been torn down, but it was a riverfront mall downtown Jacksonville, and there was a gaming tournament going on. Well, a gunman went in and started shooting at the tournament. And so that mass shooting happened 5 years ago on that day, on Saturday. And he did reference that he knew that, and that was one of the reasons that he chose that date. But his direction wasn't specifically at Edward Waters. The specificity of it was Black people. Yeah, African Americans. That was his full target.
So we know that the city of Jacksonville needs prayer. Those people in that area, they need food. And as it relates to increasing any sort of police, have there been any increase or anything that they have done from a police standpoint to make those residents feel safer?
I would say there's a lot of patrols in the area. The FBI, who were superstars in my book, they were literally, by the time I got from the scene down to the sheriff's office for the briefing that they were bringing in the elected officials, the FBI was there when I got there. And they had briefings of the case. Their team, along with the Clay County Sheriff's Office, was at the suspect's home. I mean, they were on it. And so, yes, to answer your question, yes, there's additional police presence, not just in the area, but at Black churches, Black schools. But Jessica, I want to get something different. I had this is where it gets deep. I had the ability or the honor to reach out to the National Association of Black Psychologists, the local chapter and the national chapter. Here's one of the issues psychologically. There's when these incidents like these happen, there's a fear that sticks with us that we don't know how to get rid of. At that march I was telling you downtown, there was a skyway, kind of like the skyway in Miami. We have a skyway downtown, not as nice as the one in Miami, of course. And I was standing down, and so just under the skyway is James Weldon Johnson Park. And I look up, and there was a man who was standing at the skyway alone, and he was standing looking over the edge. I don't think I would have been unnerved by that in the past, but at this moment, I wasn't shaking, but there was something about me that it felt uneasy. Right. And then I'm turning to other people and we're all looking like, okay, what's going on? Right. Mm-hmm. There was a time, and I told a friend of mine who's a psychologist as well, he's a VP at one of the schools here, that, and Jessica, I've only been on the council, about 50 days. And mm-hmm. I literally was thinking about how I would get off the dais at the council. Not when the shooter came. I was thinking about if I couldn't get to the side door based on where my position is on the city council, where I could maybe wipe some blood from to put on myself to play dead. These are thoughts I was thinking, Jessica, in 2023, in America, in a city that is a pretty cosmopolitan place. And so I honestly, as I talked to my friend, I asked him, I said, is something bad that I'm having these thoughts? He said, it's absolutely natural. But here I am, a 40-some-year-old elected official, college professor, all that stuff. What about those kids that are in those communities who are now afraid to go to Dollar General? What about the students that have been text messaging me, not wanting to come out of their dorm room, right? And I'm fortunate that we do have some people in the space of psychology and psychiatry to help. But those are the scars that are, yeah, we need the food. Yeah, we're putting money in and making sure these people get buried, and we're wrapping our arms around them and showing love. But this kind of action causes scars. Like this young lady who ran out of the store, who survived the survivor's guilt, I'm sure. And I saw her do an interview and she just looked dazed.
Right.
Right. And sometimes there's just, all we could do is hug, Jessica. We still, again, I try to be as impartial as possible. We stood in the street and all I could do, was stand there and pray. We stood there. I asked everybody to just join hands and we prayed. Because if we thought about it too much and hard in that space, it would have probably sent us into some kind of mental meltdown.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a heaviness, but we still need this. We've got to keep the conversation up. That's the problem. We think that this thing happens, and then a couple days later, the conversation ends, and we go back to our corners, and we go back to divisive policies, and we go back to incendiary rhetoric, and we end up in this space again. I mean, come on, this is the 400. What is it? I think the number that I read. This is the 435th, 436, something like that, mass shooting in the U.S. this year. So it's not. Yes, this is about race. Yes, this is about a crazed, racist domestic terrorist. But it's also about gun control, because the guy was Baker acted in 2017. We know that there were some mental issues with him. And I'm not excusing what he did, but I will tell you, there should have been no reason that he should have been able to get his hands on high-powered weapons. Meanwhile, here in the state of Florida, we've just passed a permitless carry statute with the state. How do we get to this place? We have got too many guns on the streets. You're right. And people have said it before. Guns don't kill people. You're right. Stupid people with guns kill people. But when you allow the stupid people to get the guns, people die.
Right.
So if we're not going to limit them to get the gun and limit their getting of the guns, we've got to limit the guns. Yeah.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts?
I just want us to, a lot of times, and Jessica, you know this, it's all about thoughts and prayers. Everybody says thoughts and prayers, and we need those too. I keep hearing people say it's more than thoughts and prayers, but we need to come to the table with some action. One thing I know for sure, our dignity is not for sale. There is no amount of money that will allow our dignity to be sacrificed. There are so many of these situations that we don't even know of around the state. This is just what we know, but there are people that are doing things that are untoward just because people look a certain way. So my closing thoughts and statements would be, reach out to someone in your community who doesn't look like you. Join organizations or find places and ways that you can connect with people outside of your normal circles, so that we can move into a direction of equity and inclusion and diversity and reconciliation. Right now, we have a position at the Jacksonville mayor's office that the mayor wanted to have a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer on her staff at the mayor's office. And my colleagues literally took that funding out and said, you don't need that position. Like we got to stop, like we certainly aren't as diverse as we need to be, as we should be. But tolerance is something that until it is firmly reached, we've got to go and do the work consistently, not one time, but little things like that, or how we plant the seeds that bear the fruit of what we saw last Saturday.
Councilman, thank you for your words of encouragement, your direct call to action to everyone. We want to bring you back on the show again. So unless you have something that you would like to bring to us, the door is always open. You have the opportunity, the uninvited. You just need to come on. Just let us know how we can support you, get the message out, and I just want you to stay encouraged and to continue to keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much. It is hard, but I will say your prayers and this platform, I do feel at home here. I love this platform. Thank you. I've shared it with my friends in the media and others, and I just please keep doing the work. I know it's hard sometimes, but I just am so thankful for this, and I'm going to continue to push, and I'm gonna take you up on that. This is my house too, so I
Yes,
love
it
it, and
is.
I feel right at home. Thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you. And thank
Yes.
you for joining us, the
Thank
Culture family. Of course, tonight at 6, we'll be back with another edition of My 2 Cents. Grab a drink and join us for all the shenanigans and all the hot topics tonight. I know that we're talking about something about Jay-Z. Did you see what Coco Gauff did? I mean, just great topics. Come and join us tonight. See you there.
The Culture is produced and owned by Hip Rockstar Media and is distributed by the Culture Media Group. It cannot be reproduced or broadcast without written consent. All rights reserved. 2023.